This is the next video in a series of videos that describes how to compose the behavior and the capabilities of units by attaching models to them. And if you stuck with me this long, thank you very much. Congratulations. We are actually done with composing the units using all the different types of models, all the different models that are available in the tutorial models. So obviously you can create many more subclasses, and the starter models have many more subclasses, and there's a couple other types of models that we don't include in the tutorial models. For example, atmosphere models, we don't talk about that in the tutorial models. There is an atmosphere model in the starter models, but we don't have one of those in the tutorial models. But we have a model pretty much of all of the major types of models that can be created for Flames, even though they are, as I've explained before, very simple. So we've looked at all of them now. So we've composed units using every one of the models that we have in the tutorial components plugin. So what we're going to do now is change gears just a little bit. And we're going to talk about something called the script dictionary. And this is a very simple concept, a very simple type of object, but it is very, very powerful, and it is used all the time in Flames. We haven't used it yet in Flames, but I'm going to show you how to use it, because in all of the tutorial scenarios and starter scenarios that are in the Flames database, dictionary entries are used almost without exception. By the time this video is over, you'll understand why we use dictionary entries. So up until this point, we have been specifying the composition of units in script, and we've been typing the script directly in the script window. So we have our composition for a commander, we have a composition for our shooter, and we have a composition for our truck. So we've been manually editing these scripts for each of these units. We very rarely ever do that. We only do it for teaching purposes or for just ad hoc purposes. We very, very rarely will specify the composition directly in the script of an individual unit. Instead, what we will do is we will use a dictionary entry. So I'm going to open up the dictionary entry window now. It's down here at the bottom of patterns, or parameters, right above patterns. And I'm going to just undock it here and put it over to the side so we can look at it at the same time that we're looking at this particular window right here for units. So I'll just push it off to the side here a little bit. And we have included in this scenario already several dictionary entries. Now, what is a dictionary entry? Well, if you're a software developer, you are familiar with this concept. It's just an object that has text in it, and the text itself does nothing. It's just arbitrary text, but that text can be included in other places where script can be used. So, and you're going to see that in just a second. So we have a definition of a commander here, for example, and we have several employee statements here. There's actually 5 of them. And if you look at these 5 statements, you'll see that they're in a different order, but they're the same 5 statements that we have right here in the definition of this commander. So the way we would normally define this is we would not have any of these statements right here. Instead, we would do an include statement. Oops, I missed it. And when we say include and we have our cursor on that statement, we can click here to insert entity, and it shows us all of our existing dictionary entries. I'll double click on that blue commander, hit semicolon, and accept. And now my commander is composed using the statements here. So this is what dictionary entries are for. You define any arbitrary set of script statements that you think you would like to use more than once, use over and over. And then you simply put an include statement any place you want those statements to be included. And the net effect is that these statements are actually retrieved and processed in here just as if they were entered directly. So when this particular script is compiled during the configuration of this unit, the compiler goes out, gets these script statements, inserts them in line internally, and then compiles them just as if they had actually been entered in line. So you can put any number of include statements that you want in the script of a unit, and you can actually have nested include statements. So I could have another include statement in here if I wanted to. And some of the scenarios that are included with the starter content actually have some dictionaries that are nested. Normally, though, we don't. Normally, we don't need to get that complicated. So you can see here now that this is how we almost always define the composition of units. So I have another script dictionary here for the blue shooter. So if we go look at that one, and we look here at the, wait a minute, the blue shooter subordinate. So this is a, so I've got this in here. You can see I've got, it's the same statements that are right here, that I have in here. So I'll do the same thing. Rather than putting these statements directly in line, I'm going to do an include statement. And I'm going to include the subordinate version of the shooter because that's the one that has the COM device associated with it. And I hit accept. And so I still have the same composition that I had before. The autonomous version is exactly the same as the subordinate version, but as you know from a previous video, when we wanted to make this guy subordinate to a commander, we had to add a COM device so that this unit could communicate with this commander. So that's the scenario that we have right here. This shooter is a subordinate. And then the red truck, he's just got two script statements. And we created that guy from a unit pattern. We didn't do him manually, and that unit pattern was already using a dictionary. So what that means ultimately is that, as I've already explained before, when you're working with Flames, you're very rarely actually editing any script in here. At most, you might do an include statement that already has script that's already defined, and then all your editing of the unit is all done through the commands tab. So even those of us at Turnitin that are very experienced with Flames and we are very comfortable working with script, we don't. We always work with units through the commands tab. Now, the advantage of using a script dictionary is more than just saving typing. This is extremely powerful. What this allows us to do is to specify different combinations of models, in other words, different compositions of units in a named entry. And then when we create a unit, we can say, this is the composition that we want. And so we do that by specifying the dictionary that we want to include. And so as we create more units, we don't have to type these statements in over and over again. We just have this single include statement. But what's really important with this, and what makes it sort of a game changer, is that if we decide while we're building up this scenario that we want this blue shooter to have a different kind of composition. Maybe we've introduced another type of model, another class, maybe we have a different type of munition, maybe we're going to attach a different kind of cognition model to it. So our base definition of the blue shooter, the base composition of the blue shooter is defined using a different set of models. If I'm using dictionary entries, I just go to my definition here. I I change the composition by putting in the models that I want. I hit accept, and every single unit in the scenario that has been built to have this composition gets the composition updated. So it's similar to the meta objects, and the reason that we use meta objects, if we have because we have a meta object here, I could go to this guy and change his max speed, and everybody that is defined, composed by attaching this particular platform, would get the updated version of my meta object. In the same way, everybody that's defined by including this particular dictionary, as soon as I update it, they all get defined. And you can imagine if you've got a scenario that's got a couple thousand players in it, which is not unusual for Flame scenarios at all, that it would be prohibitively labor intensive if you decided as you were evolving that scenario and adding new capabilities to your simulation, and you decided you want to enhance the capabilities of a certain type of unit, and you had 100 of them in your scenario, and they were all directly defined their composition, you'd have to go edit 100 different units. But with a dictionary entry, you don't have to do that. So as I mentioned, you will be hard pressed to find a scenario in Flames that defines units by directly entering employee statements, with very few exceptions. In fact, right now I can't think of any. All the scenarios that come in the content in the Flame store, they're all using dictionary entries. So now you know a little bit more about how we define scenarios, and if you have a different composition, a variation of that, and you want to preserve the original, you just name it something different, and you build up this library, your dictionary of script and dictionary entries, and then you use them to create your players. Now in the next video, we're going to talk about another way that we use these dictionaries that makes them even more helpful. But for now, that's all I want to tell you about dictionary. They're a very simple construct, but they are extremely powerful. And this also, by the way, helps you understand why it is that we're so bullish about using script to define the behind the scenes to define how units work. This is an example of where script is just extremely useful, extremely powerful. So thank you for watching, and thank you for using Flames.